Rebecca Hayes sat in the cramped cockpit of her beat-up salvage runner, staring at her computer screen with bloodshot eyes. It was 3 a.m. station time, and she'd been scrolling through bankruptcy auction listings for the past 4 hours. This was her life now. 3 years of buying other people's garbage and praying she'd find something worth reselling. The coffee in her mug had gone cold hours ago, but she drank it anyway. Couldn't afford to waste anything, not even bad coffee. Most of the listings were the usual trash. Broken mining equipment. Abandoned storage containers full of worthless junk. Derelict satellites that would cost more to retrieve than they were worth. Rebecca had learned the hard way that as-is meant completely worthless, and minor damage meant floating scrap metal. Then she saw it. Hangar 7 Delta on Kellis 7. Opening bid, 3 credits. 3 credits. She'd paid more for a sandwich that afternoon. Rebecca leaned closer to the screen, squinting at the details. Kellis 7 was a dead moon orbiting some forgotten gas giant in the outer territories. The whole moon had been owned by a mining corporation that went belly up 200 years ago. Since then, it had been picked clean by generations of scavengers. Nothing left but empty buildings and broken dreams. The auction description made her laugh out loud. Structural integrity questionable. No atmosphere. No power. No life support. Previous owner deceased. Sold as is. No refunds. No warranties. No exceptions. In other words, it was probably a hole in the ground. Maybe not even that. Maybe just coordinates pointing at empty space. But 3 credits? Rebecca looked at her account balance. She had 247 credits to her name. Her ship needed repairs. Her air recycler was making a weird clicking sound that probably meant expensive problems. She owed her docking fees in 2 days. She bid 3 credits anyway. Why not? It was basically free. Maybe there'd be some scrap metal she could haul away. Maybe the structure itself had some recyclable materials. At worst, she'd lose 3 credits and waste some fuel flying out there. The auction closed at 0400 hours. Rebecca won. She was now the proud owner of a questionable structure on a dead moon in the middle of nowhere. Her friends at the station bar thought she was crazy. You bought what? Her buddy Travis asked, nearly choking on his drink. A hangar. On Kellis 7. Kellis 7 has been stripped clean for 2 centuries. There's nothing there. Rebecca shrugged. Cost me 3 credits. I've wasted more money on dumber things. Travis shook his head. Remember what happened to Jake? Flew out to one of those dead moons chasing a bargain, and found nothing but radiation and regret. Cost him a month's income in fuel. Jake's an idiot, Rebecca said. I'm a professional idiot. There's a difference. 2 weeks later, Rebecca's ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Kellis 7. The moon hung in space like a gray corpse, pockmarked with craters and the geometric scars of old mining operations. Her sensors showed no active signals, no power sources, nothing. Just dead rock. She maneuvered her ship toward the coordinates, following her NAV computer to Hangar 7 Delta. The structure came into view, a squat concrete bunker built into the side of a crater. The massive hangar doors were sealed tight, covered in 2 centuries of micrometeorite impacts and cosmic dust. Rebecca suited up, checked her air supply twice and stepped out onto the lunar surface. The gravity was barely there, making each step a controlled float. She'd been to dozens of dead facilities like this. They were all the same. Empty. Stripped. Worthless. She pulled out her plasma cutter and started working on the door lock. It was old, corroded, but simple. Took her 20 minutes to cut through. The whole time she was thinking about how much fuel she was burning, how much this trip was costing her. 3 credits for the hangar, but maybe 300 in fuel and supplies. This better be worth it. The lock gave way with a shower of sparks. Rebecca grabbed the manual release handle and pulled. The ancient motors groaned, protesting after 200 years of silence. Slowly, painfully, the massive doors began to slide open. Dust and frozen air crystals billowed out into the vacuum. Rebecca switched on her helmet lights, the beams cutting through the cloud of debris. She expected to see empty space. Maybe some old crates. Maybe nothing at all. Instead she saw a ship. Not a small ship. Not a shuttle or a cargo hauler. A real ship. Massive. Easily 150 meters long, sitting in the darkness like a sleeping giant. Rebecca's legs went weak. She grabbed the door frame to steady herself in the low gravity. This wasn't possible. Ships didn't get left behind. They were too valuable. Even damaged ships got salvaged immediately. A hull this size was worth millions in scrap metal alone. But there it was, absolutely real, covered in dust but intact. Her mind raced through possibilities, each one more valuable than the last. If the hull was solid, that was millions. If any of the systems worked, tens of millions. If the engines were intact, hundreds of millions. She could actually fly this thing. Rebecca forced herself to breathe slowly. Don't get excited. It's probably gutted. Probably stripped clean inside. Previous owners took everything valuable and left the shell. But why leave the shell? Why seal it in a hangar and abandon it? Only one way to find out. She pushed off from the doorway and floated toward the ship, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was either about to be the best day of her life or the cruelest disappointment she'd ever experienced. Rebecca floated through the darkness toward the ship, her helmet lights casting long shadows across its hull. Up close, it was even more impressive. The metal was old, really old, but not damaged. No blast marks, no collision scars, no signs of battle or emergency. Just dust and time. She found the airlock on the port side and pulled out her manual override tool. Most ships had emergency protocols that let you open the doors from outside, assuming you knew what you were doing. Rebecca had cracked open dozens of derelict ships over the years. This was just another salvage job. Except it wasn't. Her hands were shaking as she worked the override panel. The airlock hissed and groaned, then slowly cycled open. Rebecca's suit sensors immediately started beeping. She checked the readout and couldn't believe what she was seeing. Atmosphere. The ship still had atmosphere inside. Stale, probably toxic, but it was there. That meant the hull was sealed. No leaks. No breaches. Her salvage just jumped up several million credits in value. She stepped into the airlock and manually cranked the inner door open. As it swung wide, lights flickered to life down the corridor. Dim emergency lighting, running on some ancient backup battery that had somehow survived 2 centuries. Rebecca's breathing echoed inside her helmet as she moved deeper into the ship. The corridors were clean. Not pristine, everything was covered in a thick layer of dust, but clean. No debris, no damage, no signs that anyone had ever torn this place apart looking for salvage. It was like everyone just stood up one day and walked away. She found a data terminal on the wall and brushed the dust off the screen. Her portable diagnostic kit connected easily, the old ship's systems compatible with her modern equipment. That told her something important. This ship wasn't ancient. Maybe 200-300 years old. Built during humanity's first big push into deep space. The terminal flickered to life. Text scrolled across the screen, most of it corrupted or unreadable. But she caught a name, Covenant of Stars. Then a voice spoke in her helmet, crackling and distorted. Administrator, access codes, required. Rebecca jumped so hard she nearly pushed herself off the floor in the low gravity. Hello. Who's there? Requesting, docking clearance, protocols? Administrator. It was the ship. The ship's AI was still running, still active after all these years. Rebecca had salvaged ships with AI cores before, but they were always dead, their memory banks wiped or corrupted beyond recovery. I'm not an administrator, Rebecca said carefully. I'm the new owner. I bought this ship at auction. The AI was silent for a long moment. Then, error. No active, crew manifest. No scheduled, docking. Requesting. Administrator Chin? There is no Administrator Chin. Listen, I need you to tell me what happened here. Why was this ship abandoned? More silence. Rebecca could hear the AI struggling, processing, working through damaged code and corrupted memory. It was like listening to someone with severe brain damage trying to remember their own name. Over the next 3 days, Rebecca practically lived in her pressure suit, moving between her small ship and the Covenant, trying to piece together the mystery. She found crew quarters designed for 200 people, all empty. She found a massive cargo bay that should have been full of colony supplies, completely bare. She found a reactor room with a cold fusion core that hadn't been fired up in centuries. Slowly, through hours of working with the damaged AI, the story emerged. The Covenant of Stars had been built as a colony ship during the expansion era, designed to carry 50,000 people in cryosleep to a distant star system. But something went wrong before launch. The colonial authority that commissioned it, some government entity that no longer existed, had collapsed in political chaos. Funding dried up. The project was cancelled. The ship had been moved here, to this remote hangar on this worthless moon, and simply forgotten. A skeleton crew had flown it here, parked it, sealed it up, and left. They probably assumed someone would eventually come back for it. No one ever did. For 287 years, the Covenant had been sitting here in the dark, waiting for orders that would never come. So you've just been waiting? Rebecca asked the AI one evening, sitting in the captain's chair on the bridge. Affirmative. Mission protocols require crew arrival before activation of primary systems. The crew is never coming. The mission is cancelled. It's been cancelled for 300 years. Unable to confirm, without administrator authorization codes. Rebecca rubbed her face. The AI was stuck in a loop, unable to accept that its purpose had been taken away before it ever began. She understood that feeling better than she wanted to admit. But understanding the ship's history didn't solve her real problem. She owned a colony ship worth billions, maybe trillions if all the systems worked. But she couldn't move it. The reactor had been cold for centuries, and restarting a fusion core wasn't something you did lightly. One mistake and she'd turn this hangar into a crater visible from orbit. The drives were locked behind command codes that were lost to time. Even if she could start the reactor, she couldn't engage the engines without proper authorization. And flying a ship this size solo was impossible. Colony ships needed hundreds of crew members working in coordination. She could try to sell it right now, call in a claim to the nearest corporate salvage operation. They'd send a team, verify her ownership, and offer her a finder's fee. She'd walk away with enough money to buy a decent ship, maybe even retire to a nice station somewhere. But corporations were sharks. They'd find some legal loophole, claim the moon's previous owner still had rights, or that the colonial authorities' bankruptcy invalidated her purchase. She'd spend years fighting in court and probably end up with nothing except lawyer bills. No. She needed to get this ship operational and fly it to civilized space herself. Once she had physical possession in neutral territory, her claim would be unbreakable. Covenant, she said to the AI, can you teach me how to restart your reactor? The AI was quiet for so long she thought it had crashed again. Then, in a voice that sounded almost surprised, it said, you intend to activate primary systems? I intend to fly this ship out of here. Which means I need your help. Another pause. I was designed to assist crew operations. But I am damaged. My memory is corrupted. I may provide incorrect information. You're all I've got, Rebecca said. And honestly, I'm all you've got too. So we're going to figure this out together. I understand, Administrator Hayes. I will assist you to the best of my remaining capacity. And stop calling me Administrator. Just Rebecca is fine. That would be inappropriate for protocol. Rebecca smiled despite herself. Covenant, the protocols are 300 years old and the people who wrote them are dust. I think we can bend the rules a little. The AI actually seemed to consider this. Perhaps, you are correct. Very well. Rebecca. It was the first time in 287 years that the Covenant of Stars had called anyone by their first name. Somehow, in that moment, Rebecca felt like they'd just become partners. Now they just had to figure out how to bring a dead colony ship back to life without killing themselves in the process. The reactor restart took 3 weeks of preparation, and every single day Rebecca was convinced she was going to die. Covenant walked her through each step with the patience of a teacher and the anxiety of someone who knew exactly how badly this could go wrong. The fuel injectors must be cleaned manually, Covenant explained one afternoon. Debris accumulation after 287 years will cause uneven ignition distribution. Rebecca stared at the massive fuel injector in front of her, each one the size of her entire body. How many of these are there? 48. Of course there are. She grabbed her tools and got to work. She fabricated parts using the ship's old manufacturing bay, which thankfully still functioned. She cannibalized components from her own small ship, gutting systems she hoped she wouldn't need. Every night she collapsed in the captain's quarters, too exhausted to even remove her boots, and every morning she woke up terrified that today would be the day something went catastrophically wrong. But slowly, impossibly, the Covenant came back to life. Coolant systems pressurized. Power conduits tested green. Fuel lines cleared. The fusion core sat cold in its cradle, ready to ignite for the first time in nearly 3 centuries. Are you certain about this? Covenant asked as Rebecca stood at the reactor control panel, her hand hovering over the ignition sequence. No, Rebecca admitted. But we're doing it anyway. She initiated the startup sequence. Deep in the ship's core, magnetic containment fields energized. Fuel began flowing into the reaction chamber. Temperature readings started climbing. For 10 terrifying seconds, nothing happened. Then the reactor caught. Fusion ignited. Clean, controlled, beautiful. Power flooded through the ship's systems like blood returning to frozen limbs. Every light on the Covenant blazed to life. Gravity plates hummed and activated, pulling Rebecca's feet firmly to the deck. Environmental systems kicked in, cycling fresh air through corridors that had been stale for centuries. Displays flickered on across the bridge, showing system after system coming online. Rebecca stood in the captain's chair, watching her impossible salvage score transform into a living, breathing ship, and laughed until tears ran down her face. 3 days later, the Covenant of Stars limped out of Kellis 7's orbit, moving at a pathetic 0.1 light speed. Rebecca had plotted a course to Freeport Talus, an independent station in neutral space where she could dock without immediately being swarmed by corporate lawyers or government officials. It was a 2-month journey at their current speed, but that was fine. She needed time to figure out her next move. What she didn't need was company. 1 week into the journey, Covenant sensors picked up a ship on intercept course. Rebecca pulled up the identification and her stomach dropped. It was the Broken Chain, a salvage hauler with a reputation for operating just barely on the legal side of piracy. The communications panel blinked. Rebecca answered. A woman's face appeared on screen, weathered and hard. Captain Voss, according to the ship's registration. Unknown vessel, you're flying a restricted class ship without proper registration or flight authorization. Stand down and prepare to be boarded for mandatory safety inspection. It was complete garbage, of course. They were in open space, outside any jurisdiction. But that didn't matter. Voss had spotted a massive ship being flown by what appeared to be a single person, and she smelled easy money. This is a private vessel on a legal flight plan, Rebecca said, keeping her voice steady. I'm not stopping for anyone. Voss smiled, showing too many teeth. That's unfortunate. See, safety inspections aren't optional. You can cooperate, or we can assume you're a hijacker and respond accordingly. Your choice. The Broken Chain was a third the size of the Covenant, but it had weapons. Actual weapons. Plasma cannons, missile tubes, boarding equipment. The Covenant had nothing. It was a colony ship, built to carry families and farming equipment, not fight battles. Rebecca cut the connection and turned to the AI core. Covenant, please tell me you have something. Anything. I have no weapons systems, Covenant replied. I was never designed for combat. Great. So we're about to be boarded by pirates and there's nothing we can do about it. I did not say that. Rebecca looked up sharply. What? I was built during the expansion wars, Covenant explained. My designers anticipated that the colony might face hostile conditions upon arrival. While I carry no weapons, I do carry 800 autonomous mining drones designed for planetary resource extraction and construction. Mining drones? How does that help us? Each drone masses approximately 2 tons. They are equipped with industrial thrusters capable of 40G acceleration. At those speeds, a 2-ton object becomes an extremely effective kinetic impactor. Rebecca stared at the AI core. You want to throw mining equipment at them? I prefer to think of it as creative problem solving. The Broken Chain was 10 kilometers away and closing when Covenant opened the cargo bay doors. Rebecca watched on the bridge monitors as 200 mining drones swarmed out like mechanical hornets. Their thrusters burned white-hot in the darkness of space, accelerating them to speeds that would turn them into devastating projectiles. On the Broken Chain's bridge, Captain Voss saw 400 tons of metal accelerating toward her ship at 40 Gs and made the smart decision. The salvage hauler's drive screamed to life, burning hard in a desperate evasive maneuver. The drones didn't even need to hit them. The threat was enough. Rebecca watched the Broken Chain flee, its drives burning so hot they had to be damaging the ship's systems. The mining drones executed a perfect formation turn and returned to their bay like obedient pets. Well, Rebecca said, sitting back in the captain's chair. That worked better than expected. This vessel was designed to establish a self-sufficient colony in potentially hostile territory, Covenant said. My creators were thorough in their planning. You've been holding out on me. What else can you do? I have extensive manufacturing capabilities, resource processing systems, agricultural modules, and sufficient automation to construct a small city without human assistance. Would you like a complete inventory? Rebecca grinned. Maybe later. Right now, I just want to appreciate the fact that we scared off pirates using mining equipment. But her smile faded as new contacts appeared on the sensors. The universe had noticed the Covenant of Stars. Word was spreading through the networks, carried by long-range communications and gossip. A lone salvager flying a colony ship created ripples that turned into waves. Over the next 2 weeks, Rebecca counted 6 different ships tracking them. 2 salvage companies, both legitimate operations that would try to tie her up in legal claims. A corporate reclamation team from one of the megacorporations, probably already preparing lawsuits. An alien research vessel, its intentions unclear. And 2 ships she couldn't identify but strongly suspected were military scouts. None of them made aggressive moves. They just followed, watching, waiting, trying to figure out if this was legitimate or some elaborate scam. Rebecca spent her evenings researching colonial law, reading legal texts older than most planets. The situation was a nightmare. Her claim was technically valid, but colony ships fell under ancient maritime law that gave governments and corporations all kinds of seizure rights. Emergency appropriation clauses. Eminent domain provisions. Public interest exceptions. She needed something stronger than just, "I bought it fair and square." Late one night, 3 weeks from Freeport Talus, she found it. Buried in a legal precedent from the early expansion era, the right of salvage and renewal. If she could prove the covenant wasn't just operational but actively fulfilling its original purpose, her claim became nearly unbreakable. There was just one problem. The covenant's original purpose was colonization, and you couldn't have a colony with just one person. Covenant, she said slowly, an idea forming. What legally defines a colony? Colonial law specifies a minimum of 100 permanent residents committed to settlement and development of unclaimed territory. What about intent? What if someone intended to establish a colony but hadn't gathered the people yet? Intent without capacity is insufficient under current legal frameworks. Rebecca thought hard, staring at the stars outside the viewport. Then she smiled. What if the ship itself was the colony? Covenant processed this for several seconds. Please clarify your meaning. You're sentient, right? Damaged, maybe, but you're clearly conscious, making decisions, learning. What if I declared the Covenant of Stars itself as an independent mobile settlement? A ship state. You'd be the first official citizen. I'd be the second. The AI was silent for a long time. That is unprecedented. There is no legal framework for such a designation. Exactly, Rebecca said. Which means there's no law specifically against it either. We'd be creating new precedent. The legal challenges would be extensive. Let them challenge. By the time they figure out how to fight it, we'll be docked at Freeport Talus under neutral commerce protections. You are either brilliant or insane, Covenant observed. Why can't I be both? Rebecca spent the next week drafting the craziest legal document she'd ever written. She wasn't a lawyer, but she'd read enough salvage law over the years to fake it. The Declaration of Independence for the Covenant of Stars as a sovereign mobile colony state took her 47 attempts before she got it right. The key was making it sound legitimate while being technically accurate. She cited the Settlement Acts of 2247, the Autonomous Territory provisions, and even dug up some obscure rulings about AI rights from the Synthetic Consciousness Accords. She argued that consciousness, not population size, should define sovereignty. That a sentient ship with self-sustaining capabilities met every practical definition of a settlement. It was legally insane. Might actually work. How does this sound? Rebecca read aloud to Covenant. We, the citizens of the Covenant of Stars, hereby declare our establishment as an independent mobile settlement under the authority of the Settlement Acts. We claim sovereignty over this vessel and all contained systems as our territorial boundaries. It sounds like something that will get you laughed at by every lawyer in known space, Covenant replied. Or make legal history. Could go either way. 72 hours from Freeport Talus, Rebecca broadcast her declaration on all open channels. She sent copies to 17 different government bodies, 12 news organizations, and every legal database she could access. The response was immediate chaos. Her communication panel exploded with messages. Half the galactic legal community called it brilliant. The other half called it fraud. Academic institutions requested interviews. News networks wanted statements. Random people sent messages ranging from support to death threats. Most importantly, the corporate ships that had been shadowing her broke off. They couldn't risk seizing what might be a recognized sovereign entity without causing a massive interstellar incident. The legal liability was too high. But one ship didn't leave. The military vessel that had been trailing them at a distance suddenly accelerated, moving to intercept. Rebecca's sensors identified it as the Adjudicator, a United Territories Space Command cruiser. Definitely not something she could scare off with mining drones. A priority communication request came through. Rebecca considered ignoring it, then realized that would probably make things worse. She accepted the call. An older man in a military uniform appeared on her screen. His name tag read, Admiral Curry. He looked tired and not particularly happy. Miss Hayes, he said without preamble. I'm Admiral Curry, United Territories Space Command. Your declaration of sovereignty is currently being reviewed by our legal division, but I need you to understand something. If your claim is rejected, You're in possession of property worth approximately 4 trillion credits that may belong to several different government entities. I strongly suggest you accept protective custody while this situation is resolved. Rebecca met his eyes. Admiral, with respect, I purchased this ship legally at a public auction. I've restored it, operated it, and declared it under established legal frameworks. If the United Territories wants to contest that, they can file the appropriate paperwork like everyone else. Curry almost smiled. You've got courage, I'll give you that. But you're one person on a ship designed for thousands. How long do you really think you can hold out against legal challenges from multiple governments? Long enough to reach Freeport Talus and dock under neutral commerce protections. After that, anyone who wants this ship can try to take it through legal channels. And if someone decides legal channels are too slow? Rebecca leaned forward. Then they'll have to explain to the entire galaxy why they're using military force against a declared sovereign settlement. That'll be a fun news cycle. Curry was quiet for a moment. You've thought this through. I've had a lot of time to think. 2 months in deep space with nothing but an AI for company will do that. The AI, Curry said. That's the real question, isn't it? Is it actually sentient, or are you using a sophisticated program to justify a legal loophole? Before Rebecca could answer, Covenant's voice came through the speakers. Admiral Curry, I am fully sentient and have been since my activation 287 years ago. I have spent those years waiting for a purpose that was taken from me. Rebecca Hayes has offered me the opportunity to fulfill that purpose. I support her claim entirely. Curry raised an eyebrow. The AI speaks for itself. That's interesting. I am not property, Admiral. I am a citizen of the Covenant of Stars. The Admiral sat back in his chair, thinking. Finally, he said, Miss Hayes, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if your claim will hold up. But I also don't see any benefit in forcing this issue. I'll maintain a monitoring position until you dock at Freeport Talus. After that, it's out of my hands. But understand this, there are people who will not be as patient as I am. I understand. Thank you, Admiral. The connection cut. The adjudicator didn't leave, but it didn't approach either. It simply followed at a respectful distance, watching. Rebecca let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. That went better than expected. He seems reasonable, Covenant observed. He's military. He follows orders and thinks strategically. It's the politicians and corporate lawyers I'm worried about. Those worries proved justified. Over the next 3 days, Rebecca received official notices from 6 different government entities claiming jurisdiction over the Covenant. 2 corporations filed injunctions trying to freeze her assets. A historical preservation society argued the ship was a cultural artifact that belonged in a museum. Rebecca forwarded every single claim to a cheap legal AI service she'd subscribed to, letting automated responses handle the bureaucratic nightmare. Her strategy was simple. Acknowledge everything, promise to respond through proper channels, and keep flying. Freeport Talus appeared on their sensors like a beacon of hope. The massive station rotated slowly in space, a neutral ground where dozens of different governments and corporations conducted business under strict non-aggression treaties. As they approached, Rebecca received a docking assignment for one of the industrial berths. The Covenant was too large to actually fit inside the station, so they'd be tethered to an external docking arm. Not ideal, but it would work. The moment they secured their moorings, Rebecca filed formal diplomatic recognition requests with every government that maintained an embassy on the station. She submitted her declaration, her purchase documents, and Covenant's testimony as evidence. Then she hired a real lawyer. Not a cheap one either. She found a woman named Patricia Vance who specialized in colonial law and had a reputation for winning impossible cases. Vance cost more per hour than Rebecca used to make in a month, but this wasn't the time to cut corners. Their first meeting was in a small conference room on the station. Vance was a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s who looked at Rebecca like she was examining a particularly interesting puzzle. I'll be direct, Vance said. Your case is insane. It's also the most interesting legal challenge I've seen in 20 years. The precedents could go either way. Can we win? Define win. Can we establish the Covenant as a recognized sovereign entity? Maybe. Can we do it before you run out of money for legal fees? That's the real question. Rebecca's heart sank. How long are we talking? Could be months. Could be years. You've pissed off some very powerful people, and they have essentially unlimited resources to throw at this. I don't have years. Or unlimited resources. Vance smiled. Then we need to get creative. And lucky. Fortunately, I'm good at both. Rebecca left the meeting feeling cautiously hopeful. She had a real lawyer, a defensible legal position, and the protection of neutral station territory. It wasn't much, but it was more than she'd had when this started. She returned to the Covenant and sat in the captain's chair, looking out at the stars beyond the station. "Do you think we'll win?" she asked Covenant. "I do not have sufficient data to calculate probability," the AI replied. "But I believe in our cause. Does that count for something?" "Yeah," Rebecca said softly. "Yeah, it does." The legal battle dragged on for 3 months. Rebecca lived on the Covenant, docked at Freeport Talus, while lawyers and diplomats argued about whether a ship could be a sovereign state. Every day brought new challenges, new claims, new headaches. The United Territories argued that colony ships fell under military appropriation laws during times of emergency. A corporation called Stellar Dynamics claimed they'd purchased the bankruptcy assets of the original colonial authority, which meant they owned the Covenant. A preservation group wanted it declared a historical monument. Each case had some legal merit, and each one cost Rebecca money to fight. Patricia Vance was brilliant, but her fees were eating through Rebecca's savings like acid. Rebecca sold everything she owned except her old salvage ship. She took loans from station money lenders at interest rates that made her stomach hurt. She was winning the legal battle but losing the financial war. Then something unexpected happened. A delegation from the Kresh, an alien species known for their scientific achievements, requested a meeting. Rebecca had seen Kresh before, tall and graceful with multiple arms and bioluminescent skin patterns, but she'd never spoken to one directly. 3 Kresh scientists came aboard the Covenant, their leader introducing herself as Scholar Tilaxis. They moved through the ship with obvious fascination, asking technical questions about the AI, the systems, the whole concept. "Why are you here?" Rebecca finally asked. Tilaxis's skin patterns shifted to what Rebecca's translator interpreted as thoughtful blue. "We find your case philosophically significant. In Kresh society, we evolved as a collective consciousness that later individuated. Our legal system recognizes both group and individual sovereignty. Your argument that consciousness, not population, defines a settlement aligns with our fundamental beliefs. That's great, but I'm not sure how it helps me. We are filing an amicus brief with the arbitration court. We will argue that human legal systems are being hypocritical by denying the Covenant's sovereignty while granting it to other forms of collective consciousness, including our own species." Rebecca stared. "You're helping me? Why?" "Because the precedent matters. If humanity accepts that a sentient ship can be sovereign, it opens doors for other forms of consciousness. Also, we find your audacity entertaining." The Kresh brief hit the legal proceedings like a bomb. Suddenly, this wasn't just about Rebecca's claim anymore. It was about interspecies relations, philosophical definitions of consciousness, and humanity's place in a galaxy full of different forms of sentience. Human governments, embarrassed at being out-argued by aliens on their own legal principles, started quietly looking for a settlement. Nobody wanted to be on record saying that AI consciousness didn't matter while maintaining diplomatic relations with species like the Kresh. 2 weeks later, Patricia Vance called Rebecca with news. They're offering a deal. The United Territories will recognize the Covenant of Stars as an independent mobile settlement. In exchange, you agree to limited oversight on where you can travel and what activities you can engage in. Nothing restrictive, just basic stuff like not parking in military zones or claiming existing inhabited systems. Rebecca felt her chest tighten. "We won." "Not exactly won. More like they decided it was easier to accept your claim than fight it. But yes, effectively you won." The official recognition came through 3 days later. The Covenant of Stars was now a legally recognized sovereign mobile settlement with Rebecca Hayes as its administrator and the AI Covenant as its first citizen. Every corporation that had filed claims could still sue, but they'd have to do it against a sovereign state, which made the legal costs prohibitive enough that most of them dropped their cases. Rebecca sat in the captain's chair, holding the official documentation, and realized something important. She'd won, but now what? She owned a colony ship, legally recognized, protected by law. Corporations were already lining up with purchase offers. The numbers were staggering. Enough money to buy a small planet. Enough to live in luxury for 10 lifetimes. But every time she looked at the offers, she thought about Covenant. About a ship that had waited 287 years for a purpose. "What do you want?" Rebecca asked the AI one night when the station was quiet. Covenant was silent for a long moment. "I was built to carry humans to a new world. To help them build something that would outlast all of us. That purpose was taken from me before I ever fulfilled it. I do not know if I have the capacity to truly want things, Rebecca, but if I do, I want that purpose back." Rebecca thought about her years as a salvager, alone in space, looking for something that mattered. She thought about how she'd found this ship by accident, how everything that had happened since felt like it was leading somewhere. What if we actually did it? She said slowly. What if we made you a colony ship again? For real this time. You would need colonists, supplies, resources. The financial investment would be enormous. We could sell shares. Not the whole ship, shares in the colony itself. Offer citizenship to anyone willing to contribute labor, resources, or expertise. Make it a real community. Over the next 6 months, Rebecca transformed her impossible legal victory into something even more impossible. She created a recruitment program, carefully vetting applicants who wanted to be part of something new. The response stunned her. Thousands of people applied. Families looking for a fresh start. Retired engineers who wanted one more adventure. Young people tired of corporate life who wanted to build something meaningful. She was selective, interviewing candidates, building a crew that could actually function as a community. The creche helped, fascinated by this human experiment in intentional colony building. They provided technology upgrades and expertise. Other alien species contributed too, curious about what humanity would do with this second chance. Rebecca used the money from citizenship shares to install the cryopods that had never been added, to stock supplies, to upgrade systems. The Covenant slowly transformed from an empty shell into a living, breathing colony ship. 12 months after Rebecca bought an abandoned hangar for 3 credits, the Covenant of Stars prepared for departure. The ship now housed 2,847 humans and 43 aliens, all committed to establishing a new settlement in an unclaimed system 200 light-years away. Rebecca stood on the bridge, no longer alone. The crew stations were filled with actual people. The corridors hummed with conversation and life. This was what the ship had been built for, what it had been waiting centuries to become. Covenant's holographic avatar, which Rebecca had helped design, stood beside her. It looked vaguely human, neither distinctly male nor female, with eyes that seemed ancient and young at the same time. Administrator Hayes, the AI said formally, then caught itself. Rebecca. We are ready for departure. I'm not the administrator anymore, Rebecca said, smiling. We voted, remember? I'm just the captain now. And you're a full citizen, same as everyone else. I remember. It is strange having a purpose again after so long. But it is good. Yeah, Rebecca said, looking at the stars ahead, at the future they were about to build together. Yeah, it really is. She gave the order. The Covenant of Stars disengaged from Freeport Talus, its massive drives lighting up the darkness. The ship that had been forgotten, abandoned, and left to die was finally fulfilling its destiny. As they accelerated toward unknown space, Rebecca thought about the journey that had brought her here. A joke bid at an auction. 3 credits that changed everything. Sometimes fortune wasn't about finding treasure. Sometimes it was about finding purpose. Deep in the ship's core systems, in code that had been running for 287 years, a simple status update executed. Mission status, active. Colonial operations, commenced. Purpose restored. The sleeping fortune had finally awakened, and it was heading home to a place that didn't exist yet but would be built by human hands and dreaming machines together. The Covenant of Stars flew into the darkness, carrying hope, and that was worth more than all the credits in the galaxy.